Welcome to another Speak of the Devil. I'm your host, Reverend Campbell. I really appreciate everyone coming in live. I see some of you in there chatting already, so thank you very much for that. I've got a great show for you this week, and I've got a great guest for you to help me sort of work our way through this discussion. I'd like to introduce Witch Dr. Troge. How are you, my dear?
I am great. How are you doing?
Very, very well. First, just let me say, this is a subject that not everyone is okay with tackling because it requires a little bit of research. Maybe it's not in their wheelhouse of expertise or even interest. And so I genuinely appreciate that you were so willing to sort of walk down this trail with me and talk about a little bit of time travel therapy.
Sure, it's outside of my normal wheelhouse, so I did try to do some extra research, and it's fun to learn new things.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Let me just say to everyone in the chat room right now, I'm going to call some of you guys out. Gary, first up, Ben Heb, Lolly, it's great to see you, my dear. Dave, this is all you, man. He's the one that sent this article in. Let's see. Ara Michelle, it's good to see you, my dear. Izzy, Turia, Evil Monkey, and Witch Cult. David, good to see you, man. Okay, so if any of you have any questions during the course of this, we're going to do our best to dissect this and apply a little bit of satanic notes to the article itself. There's actually a lot that is reminiscent of satanic philosophy within this idea of reminiscence therapy. So we're going to get into that in just a second. I want to first introduce everyone again to the co-host of this episode. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what's your profession?
I recently completed my dissertation, successfully defended that in clinical psychology in
Congratulations.
California. I'm originally a Coloradoan, and so next tasks for me are doing final minor formatting edits on the dissertation so that the school can print it, taking some vacation time off that is been much needed, and ultimately looking for some postdoc options.
Wow. So what does that mean with postdoc options? Is that like you want to continue down the avenue of academia, or you want to go into teaching or applying what you learned out in the outside world? Like, what is that?
I'm I frustrate my own field because I'm pretty much a polymath. I like to keep things interesting, and I enjoy teaching, I enjoy counseling, I enjoy coaching, I enjoy consultation. So in most states, you have to do a 1,500-hour postdoc to ultimately be licensed, and you also have to take a final exam. So to be licensed as a therapist, I have to complete additional hours on top of my already probably close to 2,000 plus hours that I've already done in therapy and things under the umbrella of therapy.
Wow.
I have some research interests as well, but I think primarily I enjoy, I guess, what I call information exchange. So I enjoy teaching or counseling or basically sharing information in ways that helps people to improve their lives or enhance something about their lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Um, because I know nothing about the field of therapy, maybe you can help explain this. Are there areas of expertise that you're drawn to within that really broad field?
Yeah, so I have done wide range of work. I've worked with children, probably age 5 and up. I've worked with teenagers. I've worked with people on the autism spectrum, LGBTQ, adults. I've done assessment with people with traumatic brain injuries.
Wow.
And I do various sort of disability related things in therapy and research. So I've gotten interested in congenital disability and to an extent acquired disability, but sort of figuring out, okay, how can I help people with disabilities adjust to the world, acclimate, do what they need to do now in the world. I think if there's a broader theme in my therapy, I enjoy working with outsiders with motivation who need a map for navigating the world, because their way of seeing or being is not quite the same. They're not like most. And I try to, whereas folks have been disparaged or insulted or put down for being different, I typically try to say, okay, you're motivated, you're engaged, you have strengths, you have some deficits. So how do we take you and help you navigate the world? So I think that's been the recurring theme in a lot of my work across that. So regardless of the client base I work with, I think that will continue to be the recurring theme. But right now, my dissertation and most recent stuff was more in disability. So that's what I've been unpacking lately.
Wow. Wow. That's fascinating. As a Satanist, as a witch, do you find Satanism is an asset in any way to your professional career?
I certainly think so. I think because it's given me a sense of sort of pragmatism and realism and working with what you have,
Mm.
and a sense of, okay, I have one life to lead, God, so how am I going to power up and live the best life that I can live? And how do I take the world as it is and work within that? So I think that's a major part of what Satanism has taught me, and then what I try to impart to clients.
Nice. Uh,
Oh, I have snuck in, without calling it greater magic, I have basically gotten clients to do greater magic psychodrama to process different issues. And even today, someone was having essentially an issue where there was an issue from their past involving religion that had tainted other enjoyable parts of their life.
mhm.
And I basically prescribed, hey, why don't you create a religion that severs your tie to basically the religious abuse you suffered, and retether the things you valued to that other things that you value, whatever you want to tether it in. So that was basically greater magic as a prescription.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I get an image of witch doctor in my head, uh, and I imagine they would be applying similar, the sort of fun historical maybe-ish ideas of what a witch doctor is. They would be prescribing some of these same ideas to treating patients too. I would imagine. So that's kind of cool.
Practicing cannibalism, whatever, which shrunken heads.
I'm going to need you to find a human being and eat them.
Absorb their mana.
Yeah. Okay, so to everyone that's come in since I last mentioned Colin and Clover, great to see you guys. Frank, thank you guys so much for joining. We want to talk today about time travel therapy, which is really just reminiscence therapy. I'm looking over here because I have notes queued up. Because, again, like you, this is not in my personal wheelhouse. And so, obviously, we're going to need to refer on a little bit of expertise from experts in this discussion while we unpack it with our own satanic lenses. Do you want to brief the article, or would you like me to do that on what it's about to start stimulate the conversation?
You can probably do your summary, and then I can tack on what I also have learned or seen.
Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of a screen grab from a little slideshow from the article itself so you guys can get a visual sense of what we're talking about here. But essentially, and this is posted from The Atlantic, time travel therapy can a faux 1950s downtown sharpen the minds of dementia patients. And this was in the January-February 2017 issue submitted by Dave in the chat room. So essentially it's taking elderly individuals on the theory that surrounding them with their own young adult or youth environment will stimulate their mind. So these could be elderly who are severely depressed, who have dementia, who Alzheimer's, which I suppose is a form of dementia. They're antisocial. These are people who are having trouble rationalizing the next stage of life, which for them is death in most cases. And so these treatments of reminiscence therapy, of surrounding them in total environments of their youth, is meant to spark that, awaken that underlying mind. So I would like to talk about the principles that behind the science here for a little bit, but understand at the tail end of this, we're going to delve into sort of the satanic distillation of this. So we're going to be talking about total environments, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of time travel too. So understand that that's in the mail. It is coming. Did I sum up that article well enough, do you think, Witch Troge?
I think that was perfect. And I even went back and I found an additional article about research that happened even prior to this in the, looked like the 70s, by a woman named Elizabeth, let's see, Langer. And she basically found that when she created a total environment for a group of elderly folks and told them to live as if they were back in 1959, they apparently did better on cognitive tests and showed more intelligence and vitality. So that's another thing that I found while looking through what were the resources on this, but there's actually very little. It was basically this village in San Diego based on this village in the Netherlands, and the one brief snippet about that I was able to find about this other woman who basically had people visualize themselves back in 1959 and apparently saw effects on intelligence and vitality.
Yeah. Let me dive a little bit into a bit of a definition of what reminiscence therapy is, because what I want to make sure we don't do, because we collectively, I think virtually everyone in here self-identifies as a Satanist in the chat room. Of course, you and I do, which Troge. But we're approaching this with our satanic lens off the bat. We can't help it. That's just the way we think, which means we're predisposed to ideas like total environments and ideas like time travel as a form of therapy. If you've read Satanic Scriptures, Magus Gilmore has a really great essay into it. If you've read anything by Anton LaVey, he's talked about Pythagorean revisionism. He's talked about total environments. So, oh, well, which cult? It's okay. I forgive you for being a pagan. No. And we'll dive into what these ideas mean to help you out and understand where we're coming from. But I want to make sure that we come into this from the therapy side of it a little bit, so that they understand why this was applied outside of the way that we see the world. So reminiscence therapy basically is the use of life histories, written, oral, or both, to improve psychological well-being. The therapy is often used with older people, again, to help them cope with death, dementia, depression, etc. And yeah, I mean, just take it with a grain of salt. Wikipedia, they have, you know, cited studies that say, depending on the type of therapy used, it has been shown to actually influence the mind and rush stimulus into parts of the brain that their dementia had otherwise slowed or shut down entirely.
It seems to slow the course of the dementia, which is really amazing and fascinating.
Yeah, it's stunning to me how proud we are in the face of ignorance. You know, how sure we are about the world and where we sit within it, when something as simple as looking at architecture or hearing music from your youth will stimulate your brain and nothing else will, into action, into life, you know? I mean, and yet we tend to be these masters of our own universes, but without this side of calling back to other memories or older times, we wouldn't be able to wake up or slow that dementia. I mean, it's wake up your mind or slow that dementia. It's amazing to me. we pretend to be in such control, and really we have no ideas the abilities of our mind to really control everything around us. Not in a sci-fi way. I know some people out there are like, ooh, fireball. No. So then there's the Webster's Reminiscence Functions Scale, RFS. It includes 8 reasons why people reminisce. So this is the basis of the theory. If you reminisce, is there a benefit to reminiscing? If there hypothetically could be a benefit, well, let's test it out in different ways and we'll see if there's any results. So reasons in this scale that you would reminisce are boredom reduction, bitterness revival, preparation for death, conversation, identity, intimacy maintenance, problem solving, and teaching and information. Is there anything else on the therapy science side of it that you think we should sort of set up for these the audience members?
Well, I like your previous comment about we think we're in control, but actually there's all of these different forces shaping how we feel and think. Yeah. So we know that there's the nocebo effect, the placebo effect, that people actually feel better or feel worse based on whether they think something should be making them feel better or worse. We know that stereotype threat can make people perform worse on a test because it primes negative stereotypes about themselves. There's an interesting study that I don't recall who did it or when, but they basically had a group of young people memorize a list of words that had to do with aging and being elderly, and then they timed them walking down the hall relative to the control group, and they moved more slowly. So they got a bunch of young people to move in a more decrepit fashion just by timing them with elderly words. So this is really kind of fascinating stuff based on how we get primed and what our environment does can actually help us to unlock or tap our potential, or can actually tap into fears or anxieties that limit our potential.
Yeah. No, this is so fascinating to me. So what they would do in this study, in the article that we're speaking to, is they have sort of daytime mini cities, and they would have different types of environments in that city, whether it's a store or a theater or a record shop or, you know, whatever it is, a malt shoppy. They would just have these different little segments, and they would take groups of these elderly individuals and just sort of, for like class in school, basically put them in this space, let them interact with the space and each other in the space, with all the sounds and sights and smells of that time and this total environment, and then rotate them throughout the day to, you know, every little shop. So they would be fully immersed. They would be forced to engage with this environment. And I guess the theory behind that is the longer you're in it, the more you're forced to interaction, the more real it becomes to you, or the more the reminiscence of the reality you had once lived becomes, that it inspires that something inside of you, of which, you know, not even the scientists running these tests fully understand, I don't think. Something inside of you that just helps you either degrade slower or come alive in certain ways, whether it's speech or behavior or whatever.
And they're priming the memories typically that are the last to fade. So they're going far enough back in time to where there's still I would say, more of an anchor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that was surprising to me because, I mean, just the way I think about memories, it seems like it would be harder to remember those further away experiences, sights and sounds and smells, than the more recent ones. But the study actually proves that it works in the opposite.
Yep.
That's stunning to me.
And we're still learning about memory, and what's interesting is, depending on recency and the type of memory, it gets stored in different parts of the brain. So, for example, brain studies where someone's hippocampus gets damaged, which is what we normally associate with memory, we'll still have motor memories or musical memories or other. The brain is smart. It knows that it can't put all of its eggs in one basket. So even if you destroy the primary memory center, there are still specters or ghosts of what we would call memory scattered throughout the brain.
Yeah. No, it's, oh God, I think this is so interesting. So let's talk a little bit about total environments. Can you explain to the good folks watching what total environments are from, our satanic perspective, like as, Anton LaVey?
Well, as I've always understood them, that a total environment is an environment that you create that appeals to your core aesthetic sense, that adheres to that aesthetic style. And the purpose is to evoke powerful feelings in you that allow you to be more productive, more vital, uh, lead a more enriched life, and basically have more magical experiences that you may not be able to have in the outside world. It's also an antidote to the perhaps arguably consumerism of the larger society, because instead of consuming the dominant culture that's being shoveled at you, you go into your own space and you say, well, God damn it, I want to have a medieval village in my basement, or I want a 1920s speakeasy, and you create it. The creation in itself is a magical act, and then you can enact role plays or reminiscences or imaginings in that space that allow you to basically enter a more, como se dice, it's essentially an intellectual decompression chamber. You can enter a more magical, imaginative state of mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to step back really quick because I'm going to jump on this total environment discussion a little bit more. But David says he imagines that the oldest memories are the last to fade because many of their youth were some of the best experiences of their life.
Yes. It's salient, it's powerful.
Yeah. But I almost think because you're going to be scarred by your your negative experiences too. You may block some of those out of your recent memory, but you're going to be forced to relive them on any trigger. So I don't know that it's just good experience or maybe not even maybe powerful experiences. What if it's just the base idea, like scratching scratching a coin on a wooden seat or something. The longer you scratch at it, the deeper that etching becomes that you create. And so maybe memories are like that in the tissues of our brain. The more we reminisce or the more we relive them or the more triggers that are associated with them, the more vivid they become simply because we're scratching at them longer.
Well, and the amazing thing is that as we scratch at them, we're not technically, memory isn't like a video recording device. So even when you pull a memory, you are actually creating elements of it.
Yeah.
So recall, I'm sorry, is typically flawed, and it gets mixed and confabulated with other emotions and experiences and what we've heard. And there's been cool experiments where they've actually been able to plant false memories into people about meeting Bugs Bunny at Disney World. So memory is flawed. So even recall is it's a combination of the recall and a sort of creation process.
Yeah.
And our brains, there's been interesting research in how people remember negatives versus positives, and part of it seems to have to do with your personality, but overall, what seems to come out is that your brain is inclined to gloss over the negatives and accentuate positives in certain ways. So I don't remember the particulars, but they did interesting research where they noticed that ultimately people's recall of certain negative events got fuzzier and their recall of certain positive events got more vibrant and became even more positive the more they talked about it, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah,
and
it's sort of
all the details on that. I'm thinking big picture.
Yeah. It almost makes me wonder, in the course of reminiscence therapy, do memories need to be real at all? There's this really great scene in Scrooged with Bill Murray where he takes a trip back to his parents' house and he's reminiscing on all these great experiences he had, but they were just TV shows that he watched as a kid. they brought him the same amount of joy as if he'd experienced them himself in reminiscence. I wonder if in this therapy, if the memories have to have any basis in fact at all, if they could just be something that you believe they happened.
And that's the million-dollar question. I was even thinking before our conversation, I was thinking about exactly that, and it led to sort of the idea of the matrix of, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? And I ultimately said, well, if you take the red pill, you get to live in a shitty wasteland where you're pursued by giant spider monster robots and you eat sludge. If you eat the blue pill, you get to be in a very realistic looking environment where you get to read Ray Bradbury and watch Scorsese movies and eat steak. And at that rate, realists would probably slap me, but I might be tempted to eat the blue pill.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is so amazing. So, if our pursuit of a fulfillment in life, if our pursuit of happiness in the real life that we define, if the reality is, hold on, dig this. We create our own realities every day. We, through the use of lesser magic, manipulate the world around us in accordance with our own will, making changes that would not naturally occur on their own. If we're already manipulating reality, the manufacturing of reality already, how is it any less real if you do, in your scenario, take that blue pill? You're buying into this reality, you're embracing it and championing it as your own. How is that any less valid than, those scary spider monsters and the sludge?
And I think it depends on who's doing the choosing. So what struck me about these villages is these people are not necessarily choosing to be marched to the pretend ice cream shop.
That's true.
Village might not be representative of their most fond or salient memories. They're being placed in a controlled environment because they're people with dementia, and their caretakers have basically said, okay, this village is the best, most humane way we've found to enrich their quality of life as best we can with what we have, and to keep them reasonably docile and happy. But they're not the ones performing the magic here. They are being subject to the magic. They are in the environment as created by someone else. And I think we as Satanists typically say, I'm going to build my own total environment. That is the preference. I think people would typically prefer to enter into an environment where they've had a stake or they've had a role in building it. So I think that's important to keep in mind, is who's building the environment and for whom and for why.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good point. Izzy Grimm says he likes spiders though, so take the fucking red pill.
I also like spiders, not necessarily robot spider monsters, but I like the real thing. As long as it's not in my shoe or my face or before I put contacts in.
Yeah. Yeah, the spider on the face.
I volunteered at an invertebrate zoo. I am fine with bugs.
Oh, wow, really?
Yep.
See, that's why I got to have you on, as just all about you, because little bits of information like that I think would be interesting to get into. So there's a good total environment question here, if I can find it. You guys are so chatty in this chat room here. Uberdenberg asks, people on the autistic spectrum disorder often go inward and detach from their surroundings. He does, from what he's told. Would this be detrimental to people like him? Or would it be kind of more of a crutch? And I'm assuming applying that to the reminiscence therapy. If you detach from your environment, would this be effective, do you think?
Well, I think that is a great question. Thank you. I think there are questions that come to mind. One is, what is your potential or your capacity? What is your potential, and what do you want to do with your life? And where do you bump up against reality or the outside world or external environments? And is there anything in external environments that you rely on or that you are curious about or that you enjoy or that you want to connect with more? Uh, when I knew we were talking about tonal environments, I also started thinking about social media algorithms and search engine algorithms, because they are actually creating not literal total environments, but they are paying attention to what we search for, click on, like, comment on, and they say, okay, this person wants more of that, so I'm going to give it to them. And then I'm going to show them ads that coincide with that. And I think what we're seeing is that that can have detrimental effects. People are enjoying seeing more of what they like, but it means that their world gets smaller. It means that they get more intolerant of other points of view, other types of people, anything that they didn't engineer as part of their feed or their search engine. And we're getting situations where people are in echo chambers where they have their own whole narrative that is totally separate from a narrative possessed by somebody else at the other end of the political spectrum. So even depending on where you are on the political spectrum, you might have a different set of facts about reality. And that's scary, especially since these people are still out influencing external reality and trying to interact with it while they are bouncing around in these echo chambers. So I'm certainly concerned about that, because I mean, if you're in an echo chamber and then you go out into the outside world, you don't have a full toolbox, or either in terms of information and resilience for coping with the new experiences or new information, or maybe not always lovable people that you meet. So if that makes sense. So there's pros and cons to getting everything that you want in your environment.
Yeah. I'm going to delve down on that thought here with a little bit of my own clarity. In just a second, I was remiss. I didn't say hi to Uber, and I didn't say hi to M. Kruger, the Odd Lifter, and Pascal G. Good to see you guys. Okay, so I want to make sure that there's a solid understanding of the difference for most people in those echo chambers that you're speaking of and a willful total environment. So in the same way that, you know, these elderly are not choosing their total environments, they're being exposed to them. Satanists, and certainly anyone who would construct a total environment through the definition of LaVey would be doing it consciously and only affecting themselves in it. And so with that in mind, I wouldn't want to apply the idea of a total environment to the echo chamber that you find in social media or just traditional news, simply because they're not just within themselves.
Right.
They are influencing other people negatively in most cases. And so that's where there's a huge difference that I think everyone has to understand before we move forward. So
I think that's really important. So it isn't just, and I think that's why I brought it up, is we need to say that when we talk about total environments, it's not just I get what I want all the time and my world is exactly what I like. It's more nuanced than that. So it isn't simply the echo chamber.
yeah.
Thank you for helping me hash that out.
Let's see, I'm trying to, there's so many comments flooding through here. Okay, I'm having a hard time reading all of those. Let me just say, as far as total environments go, under the definition of LaVey, are there negative side effects to total environments, do you think?
I think back to, does it become a kind of echo chamber where it miscalibrates your expectations for life or reality, and then you go out into the world and you're ill-equipped to cope with reality, or you can no longer benefit from the outside world? I think that would be a downside or a negative side. I think to get back to the, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent if we wanted to talk autism spectrum. my experience of people with autism spectrum is that they often do want to connect and they do want to experience aspects of the world, but it is so overstimulating and complex that they figure, okay, I'm just going to back off and not bother. So when you typically equip people with autism with tools for dealing with overstimulation and complexity and novelty and randomness and everything, whiz bang, that actually helps them to go out into the world and enjoy more aspects of the world that they wouldn't have been able to access before. It's almost like putting on a pair of earmuffs in a loud concert. You can actually enjoy the concert better.
Yeah.
So I would say that very few people on the autism spectrum are truly, truly happy rocking in the corner. It's typically that everything else that's been presented as an alternative hasn't been comfortable or viable yet. And certainly people with autism have to structure different lifestyles and different lives that some people find quirky or odd or not social enough. But I think if you're happy and contented and you're living your life to the fullest, screw the haters.
Yeah.
Okay?
Hell yeah. Yeah, I have because I'm always going into this with a little bit of awareness of satanic philosophy. I can't find a negative with the idea of total environments simply because we are in control. That's a theory.
We are in
In as much control as one can actually have. We are in control of our total environment. And so that means, hopefully, you have a little bit of perspective, a little bit of self-awareness, that you're not just consumed by this environment you're creating, that you're enjoying the environment that you've created, that you're being stimulated by it. You know, it's enriching you in some way or another. And it's not actually draining you or confining you to this weird prison of your own creation.
Well, and when you take an active role in its creation and you're mindful of what you're creating, it's much more, you're able to see the skeleton and maintain control of it and maintain a sense of perspective. When you are in the soup, it's much more easy to get caught up in the illusion. And the danger is who's creating that illusion then. If it's not you, then it could be, and who is that other person and what are their intentions? So as long as you are the wizard or the witch, I'm imagining Fantasia, then you hopefully can maintain that sense of perspective and be deliberate about creating your environment and also be conscientious about when you want to exit or enter it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which cult asks a really interesting question.
Okay.
Would a church be considered a total environment?
Huh, that is a great question.
What do you think?
Well, my first reaction is, where do we put a fork in what is or isn't a total environment? Because if it's an environment that has an aesthetic and an ethos and conforms to a style, then lots of things are total environments, and then at a certain drop-off, you don't want everything to become a total environment because then nothing is. So I'm wrestling with where do we draw a line on what is or isn't a total environment? Because then I could say, well, a shopping mall is a total environment because they're trying to so what do you think?
I think a lot of, and I have the benefit of thinking while you were talking, so I wasn't just dropped into this question like I like pushed you into it, talking about being in the soup. Yeah, you answer it. Let me think about it. I don't think so, because I think when it comes to total environments, there's intention and there's absolute control. So you are only bringing in to that environment what is reinforcing. And this is actually, we're tiptoeing on time travel right now. A lot of these principles are going to be covered in that as well. You're only bringing into this total environment of your creation what is of that era, what is of that time. If you go into a church, you're going to have a bum from down the street, you're going to have a kid on his Nintendo Switch, you're going to have some lady in the corner talking on her phone. There's going to be a lot of stimulus in that environment that you do not have control of and that are not of the era that you are trying to engage in, trying to immerse yourself in. And that, in and of itself, that shared experience, I think, is a virtual negation of the ability of it being a total environment. You can enjoy the aesthetics for the time period, but I don't think that's the same thing as immersing yourself or the manufacturing of a total environment.
I think that's exactly right. I think I have been in exactly one church that could have qualified as a total environment. It was Russian Orthodox. The entire service was in Russian. There was no electricity allowed in the service, and the congregants were wearing robes. So that was as close to evoking the time period in the aesthetic of the ancient Orthodox Church as I've been in. I would say that actually the reason that megachurches piss me off so hard is that they aren't committed to their aesthetic, and they're very slapdash, sloppy, consumerist. There is nothing sacred in a mini-mall megachurch, and I think it's what the core of why I particularly hate megachurches.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Jesus. Fewer calories, less theology.
Nice. Let's move on to a little bit of time travel. So there's a suggested in LeVay's suggested reading list. I believe it was Man in Time by J.B. Priestley. And there was a book that Magus Gilmore referenced in his Time Travel Cheap and Easy essay from Richard Matheson's Bid Time Return, which was later turned into a movie. And it speaks to the idea of you can immerse yourself so much in a total environment that you actually travel through space-time to another era and experience that. So as a Satanist, we must put on our greater magic lenses and understand that you're not going to be... Yeah, let's get that fucking hood on. It's not white and pointy, I promise. The time... Wouldn't that be a bitch? You can time travel, but you have to be dressed like the KKK to do it. Fuck! That'd be great. And you can only go back to Harlem, circa 1650 or I don't know, whatever.
Ah, shit.
I guess I'm not going to turn it off. But immersing yourself in this total environment so much that you actually travel back in the scope of Satanism, you're going to be doing this through, obviously, consciously, a little bit of suspension of disbelief, a little bit of fun, and self-exploration. The ultimate reason for doing this is to give you that perspective of era and time, a sense of history, so that you will not then fall victim of past orthodoxies, so that you will be able to spot the charlatan trying to sell the newest version of snake oil, so that you'll be a little more prepared. You were talking about toolboxes earlier to manage life. You'll have a couple more tools in your toolbox, hopefully, by the end of some of these practices. Do you want to talk a little bit about time travel in the context of the essay or just Satanism in general?
Sure. I certainly like the idea of how going back allows you to reflect in a way so that you don't repeat past orthodoxies. I think that's important. It's often, of course, it's lacking in most people. But I guess those who study history are doomed to watch everybody else repeat it then. So you just can't win. So I think it can teach lessons, it can prompt reflection, and I think just the idea of time travel, of understanding where you sit in the larger scheme of history, which is sort of the experience of awe I had while starting to do my genealogy and realizing everything that had to happen and all the people who had to survive and fight and then get together and shtup so that I could be here today. It's truly, it's awe-inspiring. I mean, it's truly amazing. It's not a miracle in a spiritual sense, but it's a miracle in that it's such a rare, implausible event that yet the implausible can still happen in an infinite universe. So that's looking back and then saying, okay, what is the future? And I'm thinking in terms, when I say the future, that triggers one of my favorite stories by Bradbury, the Toynbee Convector, where a supposed time traveler actually gets people to create a future world by saying that he visited it, and he says, here's what the future is going to look like, and then that actually inspires people to build it. So time travel can allow us to reflect on the past, and I think it can help us to think more and build upon the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it can also be future based rather than past based.
Yeah, actually, there's a really wonderful essay in The Devil's Notebook that's sort of further reflection on total environments, where he just lays out, I just off the top of my head, maybe like 20 different potential total environments.
And I remember that. That's where that came from, and that the future world was one of those archetypes that appealed to me when reading that the first time.
Yeah, so cool. So one thing I love about the idea of time travel is that, well, of course, you always fantasize about, you know, going back and changing your own actions, or maybe influencing history for other people, you know, by murdering Hitler, or, you know, something like that. But just taking a scholar's side of it. See, I have these really great conversations with Zaftig, because she's a scholar of religion. I get to see religion through the eyes of a scholar, which is very dramatically different than my own eyes.
Yes.
And it forces you to be able to divorce yourself from your preconceived notions, because there's two basic histories. There's the lived history, and then there's the reminisced history. We like to think of the 60s as sort of hippy-dippy, you know, fun-living movement, but there was a lot of pain and torture that happened in that time. We don't celebrate that, and we don't reminisce about that traditionally.
You know, reminiscences about Altamont and the Hells Angels.
Yeah, yeah. We certainly don't reminisce about the forced sterilization under the United States government of Native American women. I mean, there's a lot of really, you know, horrible things that happen in history that if you just reflect on where you are right now, your own personal life history, the culture and society that you were raised on, reflect on it with those eyes, you're going to see it in a specific light. But if you divorce yourself from those experiences, then you're forced to confront reality, the reality of history on its own terms. And that is the essence of what time travel is, specifically in this essay that Magus Gilmore wrote. We're meant to, in all of the beauty and disgusting experience, in all the reality and harshness and sensitivities of the era, fill up that total environment with everything to inspire that, not so that you're in that echo vacuum that we were speaking to earlier. I don't think that was the term we used, but that's what I'm going to go with right now. Yeah, thank you. So, but that, so that you can realistically just take a step back and experience it on its own terms, in its own way, because, and he has this really great principle here. So he defined it as the principle of resonance. And that is that with music, for example, certain tones, certain instruments harmonize together and create this resonance of experience that elevates the total piece of music, right? So it's the principle of resonance is multiple elements resonating in harmony with each other, thereby raising the experience for the individual. Using the principle of resonance in the terms of time travel would be music, tactile, whether it's textures or furniture or paintings.
Smells, taste.
Yeah, smells, specific foods, drinks, of that era, radio dramas, whatever it is, you're having it all at once. So it's not just one radio drama or one drink of the era. You're overindulging your senses in this harmony of principle of resonance, so that will hopefully enable you to then push back into space-time and experience reality and history on its own terms.
And I think what you then triggered for me, which is another one of, I think, the core lessons of Satanism, is understanding the human animal as they are, for good and for bad. So in the same sense, this full sensory time travel allows you to accept history as it is, not just good Summer of Love stuff, and not just morbid, dark Charlie Manson stuff, but realizing that they're all part of the same symphony. And you're not doing justice to human beings or history or life itself if you only recognize a piece or a portion of it. Just like you don't really understand history if you only listen to one piece of music from that era, or only read one book from that decade.
Yeah, I think the human experience is so complex. Limited, too. That's the irony of it all. I mean, our senses are so terrible to experience the real world around us. I mean, we were evolved from seafaring bacteria. So, of course, not all of our senses, our eyes are greatly attuned to all the spectrums of vision and sound, and for our ears and stuff. So we actually have terrible senses. And so even though they're that bad... Oh, fuck, dude. I totally lost my train.
Glass darkly.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We see through a glass darkly. I mean,
Yeah.
we're able to interact with the reality as far as we know, but we don't see ultraviolet light.
Right.
We don't hear things above a certain frequency. So there is a lot of reality that we miss. And that something like a mantis shrimp is picking up on. I mean, sitting and thinking about how do other creatures perceive reality, and that just, I mean, we can't fathom it, but I like to think about it, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
They say all ways of seeing are also ways of not seeing, so...
Yeah, and just that idea that space-time are linked. The only way to truly travel back, I think, in any, at least modern scientific understanding, is through the method that Magus Gilmore is outlining, where it's that suspension of disbelief and that immersion in the total environment to do so. But yeah, I was trying to say, I think that we always want to affect our own life or affect the lives of others by doing something that then splits time into a different stream. We rarely want to go back just to learn, just to experience, thereby enriching our own mind, which is the sole purpose of this version of time travel, which I think was so utterly satanic. Certainly not on the nose, traditionally not what people are going to be going to when they think of time.
Right.
So that's why I just find it so interesting. So do you think that there are negatives here? We spoke to potential negatives of total environments, but as the ideas of time travel, what are some of the negatives that stand out to you?
Oh, that is interesting. Okay, negatives of time travel. Well, certainly going back and banging your mother, not recommended.
Yeah, you can do that in this time.
Yeah, you could. The world's your oyster. Killing Hitler and ending up with Mecha Hitler.
Do you say Mecha or Mega?
Well, either. I mean, I was picturing a Mecha Hitler, like sort of a Robo Hitler.
Yeah.
With the Robo spiders. and I guess that there's a non-joke in there of you don't know, you might correct history, but science fiction is just full of stories of people who went back and tried to correct or amend history and actually made a bigger mess of things. Or when you were talking about the observational piece of going back in time to actually learn and observe and enrich and embolden yourself, uh, you're not messing with the time stream in that case. You're enhancing yourself, because if you go back and you mess with the time stream idly, you may not know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, as that saying goes, the road to hell is paved by good intention.
And lawyers, yes.
And Lord, something like that. Yeah, I mean, we are our own worst enemies in virtually everything that we do as a species. So, God damn it! It just came back to me what I was going to say earlier. Bing! I don't know if you guys saw the light because my head's close to the top, but it was right there. I'm so fucking old. I just forget everything.
It's okay.
No, you were speaking to the idea of experiencing the good and the bad, and I was trying to express the idea that because part of the majesty of human existence is that we are both at once good and bad in virtually everything that we do. Our outward expressions can be vile and wretched, but I would never want to remove those. I don't always agree with them, and sometimes I am diametrically opposed to virtually all of them, but I love deeply that they're there, that those horrible expressions are there, because that is at the essence of what it means to be human. And I know not everyone is going to agree with me here. Virtually no one's going to agree with me. But I got into this bit of an argument with someone in the past about, this is going to be close to some people's heart, and I don't mean to offend anyone. This is just my way of thinking. It was a news article about Russians beating up gays. And they were saying, this is terrible that these people are out there. I wish we could just, destroy them all. And I just said, well, I'm kind of glad they're out there. Not because I want people to beat up gay people. I think that's fucking terrible. But I like that there's that element of humanity that exists, because without it, without that expression, we're no longer human. We're just living in this Christian utopia that I don't want to live in.
It isn't a utopia once you dig beneath the surface, because then there's no free will, and if you don't have an alternative, then what is there to choose? There is no choice. So you can't have goodness without a choice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which means there will be bad choices.
And
Forever.
I mean, the way I sort of think about it is that many of our destructive behaviors and our positive behaviors can be traced back to a common, often adaptive source. We evolved them for a reason. So they serve, or at one point they served, an adaptive purpose that helped us to survive and thrive. And sometimes we misuse them, or there's a glitch and they get over accentuated. Yeah. Or they misapplied, or someone has a screw loose where they have an overabundance of something, so it becomes maladaptive. But still, if you follow the river back, you hit something adaptive and vital that's used to serve, or does serve currently, a positive purpose.
Yeah. So I'm not I'm not wanting anything bad to happen to anyone, people. Just I'm glad that there's bad people out there. It makes me feel good. And if I can time travel back and experience and understand where they're coming from, no matter how flawed that thought process is, that's going to help me move forward. And that's how I like to see it. In the same way, this time travel, where it's for your own self-betterment to move forward in a more positive way for yourself. And just like with reminiscence therapy and time travel therapy of this article, they're doing this to benefit the individuals being exposed to it, so that they can move with whatever time they have left in a positive forward direction, even if some of those triggered memories are not the best. They're still bringing you to life in your mind.
And that may be especially important for someone with dementia or some other terminal illness, that giving them that last ray of quality of life and vitality can mean the world to them, and it's ethical. Uh, it's certainly much better than sticking them in a room where they suffer or they don't ever have peak experiences ever again. And I typically find that most retirement communities are just horribly depressing for that reason. And they're almost shitty attempts at a total environment that are half-hearted because they'll put on the music or they'll decorate with cutesy crap, but they're not actually going the extra mile to create that full experience of a time and a place.
Yeah.
And that's why I suppose retirement communities typically feel so dead to me.
Yeah.
And then you get people who are the walking dead because they're in a dead environment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to close down this conversation. We've sort of hit our time wall here with a question by M. Kruger. You know this gentleman.
Hi, Milton.
Does there come a point for transcending beyond those types of actions where the bad choices are no longer so overt? So do you ever transcend beyond the good and bad actions so that the bad is not so overt, I think?
Oh, I would say, how are we judging bad and good? Can we ask him that, or what's our rubric?
Well, we have about a 12 to 15 second delay, so we can sit here and wait for him to answer.
I think we'll always make mistakes and we'll always do things we regret and we'll do things that we consider unethical or wrong or that others judge as unethical or wrong. So I don't think you can ever, until you die, you're not going to transcend, I suppose, good or bad entirely because we're human and we're comprised of both. I think you can certainly continue to learn and reflect on the past and observe yourself and observe other people and use that to at least avoid repeating the same mistakes as before or repeating the same mistakes that were done by others.
Yeah, so he clarified bad being overt violence, and where the bad is no longer violence, but but obvious tragedies until we get into the realm of thought crime and bad thoughts.
I would say that my aim is typically to figure out what's the adaptive purpose behind something or the underlying drive or motive, and then where can we channel that appropriately. And I think there may be some people who are just inherently dysfunctional, and we have a different way, I think, of dealing with them. But certainly there are folks who, or there are behaviors where we just have to learn where to channel them appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got to thank you so much. This has been an incredibly interesting conversation. I think you've done nothing but add tremendously to my understanding and the audience's understanding, provoking thought along the way. So thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Where can the good folks learn a little bit more about you online or some of your other endeavors?
Oh, that is a great question. I think one good spot is to listen to Milton Kruger's Raising Hell podcast, as I am a frequent contributor to that. And you're getting I would say, a pure, unfiltered satanic perspective vis-a-vis parenting. So I would say check me out there. And I also do research with a research team called the International Anthropomorphic Research Project, the IARP. So you can certainly look them up and look at some of our research, which I'm newer on the team, but I have certainly contributed questions and helped with the research effort. So check that out as well.
All right. Are you going to be willing to come back and talk to us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, if you'll have me, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great. All right, well, let me say to everyone joining us live and interacting with each other and us, thank you guys so much. You're what makes this show particularly good. It's definitely not me. But I'm going to ask something more of you. If you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, sign up to the email list, and leave a rating or review on the website, I would genuinely appreciate it. And yeah, if you guys want to know who's coming on the show next and what we're going to be talking about, the email list is probably the best place to do so. We sort of tease the next episode in it as well. So yeah, until we can speak of the devil again, hail Satan.
Hail Satan.